chug, 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 chug,
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff Podcast. I'm your host, Blake.
And I'm Guy.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We do drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when playing children's card games. So, we are back at it. It feels like it's been a while, eh?
Kind of. I mean, we did just get off Kaldheim. We're still kind of actually riding on the high of Kaldheim with all the new cards, seeing what cards are going to end up actually being popular in Commander. But we just did both of our set reviews, you can go listen to those. But that doesn't matter because, there was something else that was much more exciting that got announced with the release of Kaldheim.
Kaldheim kind of overshadowed this, I think, and it was the fact that there was an update to the Commander Advisory Group. There are now 4 new members, and so in this episode, we would like to talk about this new update that kind of happened and nobody else is talking about. But before we get into it, Guy, what are we drinking?
I am drinking one of my Scorpion Bowls that I believe I was drinking for the Kaldheim episode, just because I've been trying to work through those. And I do want to make a note, because I think I was talking about this during the last episode, but the cans that I bought are actually misprints. So they are upside down when they shouldn't be. Because I was going through another store, and I just happened to see them off on the side of my eye, and I was like, oh, let me check that out real quick. And I walk up and I see, oh, yeah, no, this is normal. So the pack that I bought, at least, the 6, are all upside down. So it's kind of cool. I'll probably have to keep a can and never drink it.
Yeah, you basically won kind of a shitty lottery in that way, I guess.
For sure, for sure. It's not like a misprint on a Magic card where then people will get really excited about that and then, pay even more money for that for some reason.
I don't know, just flatten it, maybe add a little bit of curl, call it a foil, and I don't know, maybe you can get away with it.
Maybe. Blake, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a thing I can't really pronounce very well, so I'm gonna go for it anyways. I mean, that's
You're already drunk, aren't you?
I mean, yes, but that's besides the point. This is a 2019 rosé. It is from Gerard Bertrand. I'm probably butchering that, I apologize. But yeah, it's just a rose wine, and I got it because tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and the bottle, if held upside down, actually kind of looks like a rose. The bottom of the bottle isn't flat, it's textured in a way that it looks like a rose. It's interesting. Caught my eye, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy this. It's cool.
Yeah, that actually does sound pretty cool. Alright, now on to the main topic, and I also just want to make a quick note, because we mentioned this again during the Kaldheim episode, where I was like, oh yeah, we should get an announcement soon, and there's likely to be big news, or no news, and I was predicting, so I kind of gave both impressions of oh, there's no news, ads, whatever, but if there was big news, then I'd be like, oh my god. So I mean, I was right, but it wasn't the news I was expecting. Typically we are hoping for one of those cards to be unbanned, Coalition Victory, Biorhythm, Leovold.
Oh my god, stop. Yeah, but we did get any of that. It was kind of a announcement that none of us were expecting, I'd say. Yeah, so we got 4 new members to the Commander Advisory Group. I just want to say, I understand that this might not interest some of the listeners, but I feel like it's very important to kind of talk about this. Even if you think the RC, the Rules Committee, and the CAG are full of crap, I still think it's important to know, what they're doing and why they're doing things. The player base and the game in general is better when people are properly informed about true things. I think we can agree. So, I think it's worth talking about. That's why I want more people to know. If nothing else, the fact that people have the correct information and know what's going on.
For sure.
And so, in my experience, there are kind of like three kinds of commander players. There's the ones that don't know the RC or the CAG exist at all. There's the ones that know they exist, but they only know like a few details. And then there's the ones that know almost everything that there is to know.
Blake, which one are you?
Oh, I clearly don't know jack shit. That's why I'm doing this podcast, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm a number 2. You could probably take that and edit it in so many different ways where, you know, it's not meant what I just said. But, yeah, I definitely am familiar with some of the people who are on the CAG, as in I've listened to some of their stuff before, or, you know, Josh Lee Kwai is kind of the most public figure for, I think, that we can recognize on the CAG, just because, you know, the Command Zone is kind of like the premier content for Commander players.
Yeah, I'd agree, but I'd like to take a step back and just kind of get everyone up to speed. Just take a minute here and just get everyone up to speed so we're all on the same page. So there's the Rules Committee, which I'm going to henceforth call the RC. They are a group of former Magic judges who made the EDH format. They're the ones who are in charge of the EDH rules and the ban list. The members on the RC have changed over time, but currently there is Sheldon Menery, who most people know. There's Toby Elliott, Gavin Duggan, and Scott Larrabee. Then, the Commander Advisory Group, the CAG, was founded on January 2019, and these members only advise the RC. They have absolutely no vote on what's banned or unbanned. Now, that being said, certain CAG members who are Magic judges, like Charlotte Sable, have helped the RC make rulings changes, like the death triggers. I know for a fact that Charlotte Sable helped talk with the RC and get death triggers changed. And so currently, the CAG members are Josh Lee Kwai, Rachel Agnes, Adam Stibbs, Olivia Gilbert-Hicks, Charlotte Sable, and Shivam Bhatt. And there have been members that have come and gone since as well. So, let's get into the announcement real fast. I will read it for anyone who's interested, and just to make sure that I am not misquoting anything, I'm just going to read the announcement. So, on January 25th, 2021, there was an expansion of the Commander Advisory Group. The Commander Advisory Group continues to be the best idea we've ever had. The passionate and insightful advice we've gotten from them on a broad range of Commander-related topics has been invaluable. We'd like more of that. To that end, we will be expanding the size of the CAG. For now, we're adding 4 people who represent some of the marvelous voices filling out the Commander chorus. Jim LaPage is well known for his community building and keen magic mind. Another sharp magic brain, Rachel Weeks, is also co-host of the Commander Sphere podcast and graphic artist who has been a frequent guest on the Commander RC Twitch stream. DeQuan Watson is a longtime Magic community advocate and activist who hosts the Color of Magic podcast. U.S. Army Major Greg Sablon, who we've been chatting with for more than a year now, represents the vast global military commander community. We can see everyone's full bios here, and there's a link that we will link in the description. We're excited to have them on board and happy to have their help taking the format into the future. There's still work to be done and room for a few more seats on the CAG. We're aware that we still have underrepresented demographics and locations. You can expect our efforts to search for, find, and amplify great voices around the world to continue, both for CAG consideration and to further foster the values of our great commander community. So that was the post.
Yeah, and what's great about the CAG is that it seems whenever they add someone, it is for a very specific reason that nobody else on the CAG already has to offer. It's great because, you know, you're getting all these different voices from different walks of life, all these different perspectives, and while I've had some issues with kind of knowing, you know, what does the CAG do behind the scenes, and, you know, we can talk about that a little more, I do still feel like it's been a great idea on their part to kind of introduce this group. Because it's also a lot of these people who are on Twitter, like Rachel, DeQuan, I often see them tweeting and interacting with the community, so it feels nice to know that they are actively looking for people who are trying to make a presence and connect with the community.
Right, and I will just say, like, almost all of the RC and all the CAG, they're almost all on Twitter. If there's like one platform that you want to have, make sure that you can contact them, like, they're almost all on Twitter, so...
Fun fact, but I think Greg made a Twitter for this, because I went to each of their Twitter pages to make sure that we were following them, and, you know, I saw that Greg didn't have too many tweets, so I was like, oh, okay. And then I, like, scroll down, and the very first thing that he tweeted was a retweet of this announcement, and I was like, oh, okay, so he's brand new to Twitter, so welcome, Greg.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the show. All right. Our plan is to just kind of go through each of the new members and kind of talk about like what their bio is, and then kind of add our additional comments and our thoughts per se. Yeah?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, let's get going. So first up, we have Jim LaPage. So Jim started playing Magic largely incorrectly on the playground with a 4th edition starter deck. After a long hiatus between Exodus and Scars of Mirrodin, he dove into Commander headfirst and never looked back. Jim loves pushing the boundaries of what's possible in format and showcases his favorite brews on his YouTube channel, The Spike Feeders. Yeah, I have been watching Spike Feeders for, like, ever since they started. It's good stuff. They do a lot of competitive gameplay, but they also do a lot of casual gameplay.
Yeah, you can kind of tell just because, you know, their name is Spike Feeders, which is a reference to Spike, the spikier players. Yeah.
But they do both. When he's not playing Magic, Jim loves cooking and baking and eating, and playing with his big dog Nigel. I want to take a quick side note here that Nigel did need surgery, so Jim sold a bunch of his Magic cards in order to pay for the surgery, and I think that's just an amazing example of just character and knowing what's important. It's like a few more years with your beloved dog versus like a non-sentient piece of cardboard. Yeah, you know, it really shows like he's got his priorities straight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would give up anything for my cat.
Mickey.
Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, I love him. He's such a jerk.
Yeah. So, actually, recently, though, Jim was on a podcast episode for Play to Win, where he was interviewed, and, you know, you kind of got to learn a little more about some of his play philosophies and, you know, what ideas he wants to bring to the CAG, almost. So we learned that he was actually asked to be on the CAG about a year ago, which is kind of interesting to me because I kind of wondered, like, what was, like, the process of, like, getting onto the CAG, and, like, why did it take so long? But, I mean, you know, also now saying that, I'm like, well, guy, there was a global pandemic last year, so you can't really blame anyone. You can't really blame someone for, like, taking their time on something, just because, yeah, priorities weren't Magic the Gathering.
But I do know that Jim says, like, the rules committee is just very slow, for better and for worse. And that's just how they operate, and it is what it is. I don't want to say bureaucratic, because that kind of has a negative connotation, but it is bureaucratic, and in my personal opinion, it's been more beneficial than harmful. Yeah.
So what you're saying is in 50 years, even though it's going to take a long time, in 50 years I could maybe expect Leovold to be unbanned by the RC.
Never! Alright, so I think we kind of mentioned it earlier, but Jim is not just the CEDH guy. Like, the rules committee didn't just go to him like, hey, you're the CEDH guy, you're going to be our CEDH guy, you're going to tell us all about CEDH and keep us in the loop. Like, he is interconnected with that end of the community, but that's not the only thing he does. Jim does have a lot of opinions about the format as a whole, and he has said that he is going to create a video series, which he started, and he's going to continue. It's called Spike on the Mic, and it's going to be a video series about him doing short video essays explaining his thoughts on the format, just so we all know where he stands. And of the ones I've seen so far, they're pretty good. Like, he's pretty well spoken, he's pretty eloquent, and I'm looking forward to, you know, maybe in like a year or two when he's done multiple of these Spike on the Mic videos, and then I can just bookmark them on my phone. And so whenever I meet someone who's like, I don't understand why hybrid mana isn't like fixed already, like I can just like hand them my phone and be like, watch this video, Jim explains it all.
Yeah, I think that was one of the better parts. I haven't watched any of them yet, but
they're very good.
From what he said about like why he's doing it, is he also thinks that there's a problem with the community in terms of like the communication side and like kind of when it comes to arguing about things. So he's trying to like break it down into a really digestible way so that people kind of understand like the issue that's at hand. When people tend to argue against the way that things are now, it tends to be that they haven't thought things through. So what he's trying to do is, you know, explain like, okay, this is the reason why, and so you need to like come up with a more valid argument than just something that you probably only spent like 5-10 minutes thinking about.
I mean, we do this podcast. It's so difficult to talk about EDH on both a social dimension and just on a card analysis sort of dimension, and just almost any dimension, really. It's hard to talk to Magic players.
Oh, yeah.
The format is complex as well. Anywho, so another point from this interview was that if Jim could ban a card, he'd advocate divine intervention based on his interpretation of the philosophy document. And then the first two cards, if theoretically there were any cards to unban, they would be Coalition Victory and Biorhythm. And that's just his perspective on unbanning stuff, but he is fairly anti-ban. He does not want to ban cards if he doesn't have to.
Yeah, I think that tends to be kind of the typical question that you see people ask someone on the CAG.
Yeah, it's like the first question, what do you want banned?
What would you want banned? What would you want unbanned? Divine Intervention definitely seems kind of like a out of left field, and I appreciate that, you know, he wasn't just saying like Cyclonic Rift or like Mana Crypt or something like that.
Oh god. Yeah.
Like, he had like a very good reason for why he wanted Divine Intervention banned instead.
Honestly, I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like there's no major rules changes that he wants to make. He thinks that the format's in a pretty healthy place. So I'm glad that we have someone more on the competitive side of Magic being able to be represented, because I remember when this was first announced and they were kind of looking to Josh and Rachel to be the voice of the CEDH community, and they were kind of like pushing back like, hey, listen, like, you know, we do have some like powerful decks and are a little spiky, but like that's not our thing. Like, that's a whole different beast that we don't know too much about. So it does seem like Jim, while he isn't like the token CEDH guy, he does have kind of his toes in that water as well.
Yeah, he has a lot of understanding, and he has a lot of connections to that end of the format. And I will say, and he said it as well, like, the perception of CEDH has gotten healthier since 2018. It's still got a long way to go, God, but it's definitely in a nice direction. Before we move on to talking about other people, I do want to make a quick funny note. Someone on Twitter like accused Jim of like joining the CAG only to like boost his like subscriber count for the spiked feeders, and so Jim like just dead ass posted a graph of his sub count, and it was just like, you know, the typical like up and down, like there was like with an arrow pointing to like when he became like when it was announced he was on the CAG. It's just like normal within the ups and downs of the graph. So it's just like, fuck you, trying to destroy me. Haters gonna hate.
Nobody goes to the CAG and asks if they can be on it. The rules committee comes to you and asks if you want to be on the CAG. So it's not like you're doing something just to like boost your own persona or your own content necessarily. So I don't know like why people would just like come after him like that.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's stupid.
Yeah. Okay. So our next person is DeQuan Watson. He has been involved continually with Magic since 94, 95, after stumbling across the game on a high school field trip. I mean, that kind of reminds me of like you and I, Blake, where we were in high school and we would play Yu-Gi-Oh! Just kind of like
lunch.
off to the side, during lunch or like during cross-country meetings or something, and like people would come by and be like, "Is that Yu-Gi-Oh?" And we were like, "Yeah," and they're like, "But so, DeQuan, you're a real one." Since then, he's been a retailer, writer, competitor, organizer, marketer, commentator, and content creator for the game. So he's done quite a bit. Yeah, his resume is pretty nice. He now spends time tackling social issues around the game on his podcast, Color of Magic. Though he's an aggro player at heart, you can find him playing all types of decks on his YouTube channel, Power Dragon. When doing neither of those, he's goofing around with his community on Twitch. He plays most formats competitively, but when it comes to Commander, he's on the casual side of things. He's a fan of several sports, basketball and American football, and is a huge lover of gummy candies. I do remember, I think it was during Command Fest 3 online, he got to play with the RC for a bit, and I forget the deck that he played, but it was something that I'd been like, I almost had never seen anyone else play that commander, and it was just interesting because I was like, okay, because I guess like when you're playing like the decks that not many people tend to know about, it definitely kind of speaks more to like, your casual side of things, like, you're playing for your enjoyment rather than, playing because you thought like, oh yeah, this is the best commander for X, Y, and Z strategy.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I know for a fact that last I checked, he only has one commander deck, and I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. Like, you don't need to own like 25 commander decks in order to have a valid opinion about the format. That's really dumb logic. Like, he knows a whole lot about the gaming industry and how it works.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Colors of Magic, which is not just like a great podcast for Magic in general, but just a great podcast in terms of like social issues and, becoming more informed. I have tried to binge as many episodes as I can, but, sometimes the topics are a little heavy, so I just kind of have to like lay off for a bit. But yeah, the other thing too is I've tried listening to some of the more recent episodes in case he had mentioned something about, being admitted onto the Commander Advisory Group, and he hasn't said anything about it yet, so I mean, he just seems like a very humble guy. Like, he doesn't like to, kind of boast about himself. So I'll be interested to see, like, when he finally does get to talk about it, or if he ever does, like, what are some of his philosophies on the game, since it kind of seems like it's a little unknown at the moment, in terms of, like, Commander. I mean, we know some of his philosophies or playstyles from watching him on Twitch or YouTube, but again, like, with Commander, if he doesn't play that much, or, isn't as public about it, it's kind of harder to, like, pinpoint, like, oh, what's the one card that he would ban or unban?
Would he unban Leopold? Who knows? We may never know.
DeQuan, if you unban Leopold, you'll be my favorite CAG member.
No. Alright, yeah. Yeah, I would highly recommend listening to, like, Color of Magic podcast. Guy, you were the one who introduced me to it a couple of months ago, and it's just very good. It's very, like, both him and Brian Allen are very wise, insightful, and nuanced in what they say, and it has opened my eyes to a lot of things that I wasn't aware of, and I probably should have known about just in the interest of being a better human being, but, better late than never, so would recommend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always feel like, you know, you and I like to joke, and like we're not like the most informed about really anything, to be honest. Like, we make assumptions sometimes about like cards, like, yeah, this card's like okay, or this card's not okay. But you know, after listening to like Colors of Magic, I'm like, oh wow, like obviously not only do like they know what they're talking about, but they're also like really witty too.
Yeah, that helps.
So we're just kind of witty, and when
That's
I say kind of, I mean like,
to make us
Yeah.
funnier.
and when I mean kind of witty, I mean like I'm witty, Blake's not. So like, I have to like do a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Shut up. All right, we should move on.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Greg Sablon. So Greg started playing Magic since 4th edition, but took a break to collect from 2002 to 2013, while focusing on college and the military, including deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2014, he quickly became immersed in EDH, and tapping Bazaar of Baghdad to draw 2 cards felt pretty great.
Okay, this is my kind of dude, because like I just bought a Bazaar of Baghdad 2, and I'm sure like if Greg was playing during 4th edition, and if he had one, probably wasn't as much as like I probably spent on one, but yeah, it's a pretty good card.
Yeah, you two can just like tap your Bazaars at each other or something, I don't know.
Draw 2 cards, discard 3 cards, get Rog Monster, you know, pretty much draw your whole deck, whatever.
That's a -1 in card advantage. It's clearly a terrible card.
Clearly you don't know anything, Blake.
Alright. Since then, Greg has become an L1 judge, a possibility storm analyst, and has an appreciation for professionally done alters on Magic cards.
OMG me.
He serves as a moderator for the professional MTG Alters resource and community, and manages Sablon MTG Alters. Greg holds master's degrees in both civil and nuclear engineering, as well as being a licensed professional engineer. He is nearly 15 years active duty Army and lives in Japan with his wife and kids. Being from Guam, he enjoys cooking, island-style barbecue, teaching and throwing his kids around in judo, and of course, walks on the beach.
I didn't make this connection right away, but I have followed Sablon Alters on Facebook for a while, and their stuff is pretty incredible. They have a wide range of different animes, cartoons. One of the more talented artists that I think I've seen in terms of like quality. Like Eric Klug and Sablon Alters are probably the two that I would say are like, you know, what Alters should strive for.
Like the gold standard?
Yeah, like the gold standard. I do know that Greg is a moderator or manager for Lepage, where his wife and wife's sister actually do the alters instead. So he doesn't do the alters. It's his wife and his wife's sister.
Okay. Did not know that. Okay. Yeah, that's another thing I'm going to say is, of all the new CAG members, I gotta be honest, Greg is the person I probably could find the least information on. I think part of that is because all of the other 3 are like content creators, so they're actively engaged in the community, and you can just generally find some information about them. But I don't think that's the case with Greg. That's not like a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, I'm glad that, you know, the RC isn't just picking content creators. They are trying to get as many different walks of life as they can. So I feel like Greg kind of fits into there, where he's probably going to become more active now because he has this responsibility to be on the CAG and to be able to give his input. But prior to that, like, he was probably only interacting much with like the alters community. And I mean, I'm a part of that as well because I do alters, but typically when I'm talking about alters with other people, I've never mentioned like, yeah, this is the card I would ban or unban if I was in charge. So that's another thing, is like we don't know kind of Greg's play philosophy, or like what does he think of the format? Like, is there anything he would change? Or is there anything he would unchange? Not change?
Yeah, we might find out in the future, and who knows, maybe he has strong opinions, maybe he doesn't. Either way, that's okay. That's cool.
Wink, wink. Alright, and our last person that was put onto the CAG is Rachel Weeks. Rachel Weeks is a Los Angeles-based podcaster, writer, and comedian from the western suburbs of Chicago.
It's kind of like you, Guy.
I'm not from Chicago, but I do live in Los Angeles. She may be comparatively new to Magic, since she started playing in 2017, which is about the time that I started playing as well. So, that's cool. But has been dedicated to Commander since she bullied her playgroup into adopting the multiplayer format. She co-hosts the comedy Commander podcast, The Commander Sphere, with Dan Sheehan since December 21st, 2019, and does graphic design for Channel Fireball, and has designed a series of Magic-inspired playmats for Inked Gaming. Outside of Magic, Rachel co-stars in Better Than Heroes, an all-comedian Spelljammer-inspired D&D livestream. She has performed stand-up comedy since 2014 and appeared on NBC's First Look, CISO's Hidden America with Jonah Ray, and the Risk podcast. So, if you're on Twitter and you've ever seen someone talk about the lasagna tier of Magic, this is where it comes from. Rachel and Dan joked about it kind of around the time when power levels were a big topic, when, you know, people were starting to go to command
Fests.
Command Fests when we could be in person, and, you know, we did an episode on that, but clearly what stands out is like lasagna tier, which is now actually becoming a thing. Like, people are like, this is how we define it. It's kind of like not like a competitive format, but it's, you know, meant for fun gameplay instead of just like fun, strong gameplay.
They did an entire episode dedicated to it, and you can go listen to it. I'm not going to explain it. I'm probably going to improperly explain it if I attempt to.
I'm improperly explaining it now. So yes, go listen to Lasagna Tier Magic to get more of a idea of what it is.
That being said, I think I have started listening to their podcast since I learned Rachel has joined the CAG. I knew of the podcast previously, but I just never gotten around to listening to it. It is very goofy and very silly, and at first it was very jarring for me, because that's just not the kind of podcast I typically listen to. But as I listened, it kind of grew on me, and I think it was actually a good reminder for me personally that, you know, that's how a good number of Magic players are. They're just a bunch of goofballs. They want to just like goof around and have a fun, silly time and make wisecrack jokes, and I think it just reminded me that that's a more accurate reflection of people. Yeah. So Rachel notably was also on, as of the time of recording, she's been on 2 episodes of Game Nights, the like well-known Commander gameplay series. She was on episode 40 and 42, so if you kind of want to see her in action, you can go watch those. There was also a recent Channel Fireball article of Rachel, where someone interviewed Rachel and kind of wrote down some of her things, and we'll try to remember to link that in the description of this video. You can go read that. Rachel also did a Twitter AMA, Ask Me Anything, on January 28th, 2021, and, you know, I read through that. The short summary that she gave was that, as far as bans go, I'd prefer unbans. I'd support the creation of a banned as commander list. Could be convinced either way on hybrid mana, but prioritize clarity. I'm a casual player, lenient on mulligans, proxies, and rules. Commander's most precious feature is Rule 0. And then there were some other things like, what would you ban? And she said, IDK, if it needs any bans, but I'd love to never see another humility again. Again, that's kind of her humor coming out. Unban, Coalition Victory is fine by me. but not heartbroken if it remains banned. Planeswalkers as commanders, it would be a logistical nightmare. And then she also thinks that Commander is in a pretty good place. So those are her general thoughts about the format.
Okay, I mean, that's good to note as well. It does help that she has been on some Game Nights episodes, so we can kind of see, like, her playstyle as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm glad that, like, people are continuing to say Coalition Victory is unbanned, because I just want it to be unbanned, because I just want something to be unbanned. Like, I don't know, it gets boring every time when they're like, nothing's banned or unbanned, and I'm like, god damn it, just give me something. Either way, like, ban something or, like, unban something, like, I know that you don't want to do that much, but it just makes my life a little more interesting.
Oh my god.
So...
But that is a common thread. All of them who have said anything have said that they think that the format is in a pretty healthy place. And I don't know about you, Guy, but I tend to agree. Yeah, we agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could all agree on that. Nothing really needs to change right now. I think, like, the only thing that I think could, change in general is just a more healthy approach to proxying and people being okay with that, just especially with some of the recent prices of cards, like, getting out of control, like all the dual lands, Wheel of Fortune, Gaia's Cradle, like, things like that. Like, I hope that just in general, people will be more okay with those kind of things, because nobody wants to spend that much money on, like, this game, but it's sometimes, like, you kind of have to, just to feel like you can compete when other people in your playgroup might do something like that. So, I don't know. That's, like, my only take, but that's kind of taking away from Rachel right now. So, yeah, no, but she does feel very well spoken too, like, especially on Twitter, if you follow her. Very active there. Again, reaches out to the community. You feel like you don't feel like you're just following someone and then, like, you're not going to hear from them. Like, she pretty regularly tweets, has, thoughts to say. So if she feels like another good person for, like, open communication of, when time comes and if you want to, like, say something and hope it gets heard, like, she'll listen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing, is I feel like most of the people on the CAG now are people who are going to be engaging with the community and, truly listening, so that we could, maybe see stuff like, yeah, Coalition will be unbanned whenever the next announcement will be, which might be May.
Around that time. So, Guy, as we're wrapping up here, we've talked about all 4 of the new CAG members. Do you have any general final thoughts?
Yeah, so I am glad that the RC is continuing to expand their outreach, like I've said, and I think that with the newest additions, they've done a very good job. But I haven't seen any major change recently to the Commander format, whether it's cards that are being banned or unbanned, where I feel like that decision has been made because it's been affected by the CAG. And I say, like, I think, because I want to highlight that, since I don't know what goes on behind the scenes during these RC and CAG meetings, and to what extent the CAG has influenced some of the decisions made by the RC. Like, they say that it has happened, or it is, very prominent, but you really can't know until, like, you can kind of, like, get, like, a Cliff Notes or Spark Notes kind of version of, like, what went down. So I would appreciate some kind of transparency moving forward, if I'm being honest. But I do know that that can also get kind of tricky on their end. Players could read through X, Y, and Z and then point out, like, oh, but what about this or this or this? So they start nitpicking, and I think that's kind of dangerous, just because no one's going to be able to have, like, the most perfect argument all the time. But if we are always trying to, like, just give reasons, too much information is a bad thing in this scenario, I guess. But I feel like we don't have enough information of what's going on right now.
Okay. So, what I am hearing is, like, we both think transparency is a good thing, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's been a long-running critique of the Rules Committee, which is partly why they invented the CAG, was to increase transparency in their actions. And I think they honestly, to some degree, have achieved that. I feel like I know a lot more about the CAG and the RC because of it, which is awesome. And kind of like you were saying, you would like to know a little bit more transparency about what actually happens in those meetings, what's actually said, what's actually argued. And that would also be nice to hear, I agree. And at the same time, I also know that there are going to be certain players who are always going to act in bad faith and always nitpick to an unreasonable degree and will never be satisfied with actions or decisions made by the RC. So it is a delicate dance. It's a tricky situation. So I do want them to continue to be transparent, and then when someone does nitpick in bad faith, just kind of roll your eyes and just keep being honest to yourself and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, the RC has stated that creating the CAG was the best thing they ever did, and I agree. I am kind of curious, though. In their announcement, they said like they are looking to expand the CAG, but the question that I then think is like, well, how big can the CAG really get before it becomes inefficient? Like, are they going to have like 10 CAG members, which they're at now? Are they going to have 15, 20, 25, 100? Because like at a certain point, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like, they're eventually going to have to make a cap. Yeah?
I agree. And it also could maybe become like a rotating table kind of thing, where the CAG isn't necessarily like appointed officials for every meeting, like it is right now. It could end up being something like, okay, for this meeting, we're going to try and get like these 10 people or these 10 people. Like they have like their pool of people that they could invite and talk to try and get all these different like opinions. I don't know like how effective necessarily that would be, but like that's another way that I could see it working out. Yeah, I feel like once you get past, because it's not just like the 10 people who are meeting, but then you also have like the 4 RC members. So you always have to think like it's not just 10, it's 14 total.
Yeah.
I don't know if like, I mean, I was surprised, I guess, when they added 4 more, but I don't know if there is like a sweet magic number. If I could like throw one more person onto the CAG, if I'm being like completely honest, I would love to see Brayden from the CEDH cast, just because I feel like he's such a knowledgeable guy, and he also kind of represents the CEDH community. So I feel like more representation there would be great. But yeah, I do want them to. They talk about like, trying to make sure that they're getting all walks of life and
backgrounds
and different countries and areas where people are playing Magic. So hopefully the next few people that they add, when they do add, are people who are maybe like more overseas, just so we can get more of their perspective as well. Like I feel like Greg right now is Greg and Charlotte, I think, are the only 2 that are not in the USA right now.
I believe that's correct.
Yes.
I'm optimistic about the future. I feel like the people they currently have are a good mix and are yielding good results. I know some listeners may not agree with that. You're totally allowed to feel that way. Yeah, I'm optimistic for the future.
Yeah, I am too.
Alrighty.
Well, we're going to do our standard outro. So, Blake, take us away.
Alright, we are the Wizard Staff Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or YouTube. and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave a like and review. It actually does help a lot. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WizardStaff101. You can send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are. Thank you all so much for listening. We hope you have a nice night. Peace out.
Peace.